Hi everybody, welcome to Goshen Prepping. Obviously as preppers, our job is to stockpile food and water and other stuff too, in case crap hits the fan. But is that enough? Well, long story short, I'll give you a little glimpse in the video. No, it's not. You have to take additional measures because stockpiling food, that should be the beginning, but there's something else you're missing that you should be doing as well. Let me jump into a couple of things and show you. First off, a quote from Henry Kissinger. Who controls the food controls the people. Stick with that one for a second. Who controls the energy controls whole continents. Who controls the money can control the world. But I have to be honest and transparent. There's a possibility that Henry Kissinger never said that. And even though he never said it, he certainly implies it all the time because he is all about a new world order and control, especially with food. Let's continue. I want to show you some excerpts from Henry Kissinger's speech at a World Food Parley in Rome, dated 1974. And honestly, he talks about some things that are good, like we have a challenge of food. No social system, ideology, or principle of justice can tolerate a world, simply put, where there's hunger and inadequate nutrition. However, this paragraph, look at this. A generation ago, and again, we're talking about in the 70s, many farmers were self-sufficient. Today, fuel, fertilizer, capital, and technology are essential for their economic survival. A generation ago, many nations were self-sufficient. Today, a few food exporters provide the margin between life and death for many millions. And oh, how I wish we could go back to some type of agrarian society where people really try to farm and everything on their own garden and stuff. I know that's not possible with cities. 80% of the population in the United States live in cities, and there is no farming in cities, practically speaking. It all has to be imported. And there's a lot of same thing when it comes to countries too. They have to import their food. But I want to point out these four attributes when it comes to food: fuel, fertilizer, capital, and technology. Why do I point out these four things? Because these are four things we're struggling with today when it comes to, well, ever since 2020 came around. First being fuel. Gas and diesel prices are practically speaking at records high. They were a little bit higher earlier, but they're still way up there. We're getting used to the idea of having like a gallon of gas for well over $3. Fertilizer. Between Russia and Ukraine, we've seen a drastic decrease in fertilizer. Farming has been hindered. Last harvest, last year, we're now starting to see some effects because for the fact that the fertilizer has not been used to grow the adequate crops. Capital, we've seen drastic inflation because of this whole thing. And of course, technology. We've had everything from chip shortages to for the fact that China wants to invade Taiwan, who has the chips. And a lot of the high detailed electronics we need for all this stuff is in jeopardy. So from 74, it's interesting how he pretty much predicted fuel, fertilizer, capital, and technology are all going to be problematic in the future. So is he being genuine and honest, trying to help people out like this paragraph said? No, but let's read the last paragraph. The world population, again from 1974, is projected to double by the end of the century. Of course, that's coming past. It's clear that we must meet the food needs that it entails. But, and here's the big but, it is equally clear that the population cannot continue indefinitely to double every generation. And at some point, we will inevitably exceed the Earth's capacity to sustain human life. Oh, but wait, there's more. There's far more than this. What we're seeing from Kissinger is saying, you know what? We want to feed the people. He doesn't care about feeding the people. That's made it very clear. It's all about power and control and money. They want to control all this stuff. So when it comes to food, and you stockpiling food, obviously we read stuff like this and said, wow, mankind can't survive when we see a drastic decrease as far as the way the population is growing anyway. So the government can't stop there. From Kissinger and from the 70s, we've seen all kinds of effects that take place in legislation, making it so, you stockpiling food, well, you know what? No, that's not going to happen for you. And this is from My Patriot Supply. Obviously, they're selling survival stuff. They have an article. It's very interesting. Wait, stockpiling food is illegal in America? We've been told to prepare for emergencies. Yep, FEMA, CDC, all those, ready.gov tells us to. And even though they suggest stocking up on enough food and water and other supplies, they say to last a minimum of 72 hours. However, it is not illegal to stockpile food. What we're doing is not illegal. There are times when the government can limit how much you can buy, like rationing, for example, or even take your food and supplies in times of crisis. And this sums it up. We tend to stock up emergency food supplies in case crap hits the fan, but you know what? Sorry, if crap hits the fan, the government can take that stockpile from you. You may have heard about this. It sounds too far-fetched. Oh, no, it is not. From U.S. Code 4512, hoarding of designated scarce materials. In these times of crisis, they want to prevent hoarding. No person shall accumulate in excess of what they actually need, or for the purpose of reselling. In other words, like gouging and selling it to somebody else for a higher amount. Yeah, that makes sense. President Kennedy signed the Executive Order 10998, which allows the government to take over all agricultural production and distribution for the proper utilization of agricultural items stockpiled for survival purposes. President Reagan signed Executive Order 12656. It talks about plans and procedures to share among the responsible agencies food, supplies, and water, to develop plans and set priorities that allocate resources among both civilian and military claimants. Sounds like socialism, doesn't it? From Reagan. And speaking of socialism, President Clinton signed an updated Executive Order 10998, allows the federal government to seize hoarded food supplies from both public and private sources. And also 12919, the confiscation of water. Then our good old friend Obama, Executive Order 13603, the government can seize and redistribute water, food, and other sources in a state of emergency. Oh, it's an emergency. I get it. Go and take control. But there's nothing telling them what they can actually declare as being an emergency and not declare as an emergency. In other words, at any whim, you know what? It's go ahead and time take your stockpile. And it's been done by both Trump and Biden, invoked the Defense Production Act to prevent the hoarding of essential supplies. And that simply made it so citizens couldn't hoard essential medical supplies. Local stores attempted to control hoarding by settling purchase limits. It was common for people to see purchase limits on things like paper products, cleaning products, and even food. So let's go ahead and think about this for just a second. Let's put some logic to this. We see the bad times are coming. That's why we're preppers. And let's say you go ahead and stockpile, you know what? I have 10 years worth of food for me and my family, just down in my basement. Why not? The government can take that and say, you know what? You shouldn't have all that food because, you know what? 10 years is a long way. We'll let you go ahead and keep like 3 months worth, and we're going to redistribute all that food. That's actually the executive orders that have been signed. They can legally do this. But what's funny about that is when you look at 95% of the population who are not preppers, I don't know the exact number, 95% sounds good, they can continue doing things like, hey, let's go eat out. Let's go to the movies. Let's blow our money on whatever. While we are the frugal ones, we're the smart ones, put our money towards stockpiling food. And then all those lazy butts who didn't want to do anything as far as stockpiling can now eat our food. That's literally what the government's saying. Literally. So what can we do about this? And that's where the whole prepping things come into mind. You can't simply just put it in your basement. Even more so, I'm going to show you in a minute how you're basically in trouble with this. But you could go ahead and take this food. Let's say you go ahead and take a 50-pound bag of rice, bury it in your backyard, which obviously there's a lot of strategies in doing that. You can't simply obviously bury the rice. Obviously, it's going to go bad. But if you put it in some kind of sealed container and bury it, it's still on your property though. And understand the government through satellites can actually see where holes have been dug. Did you know that? They can see specific areas as far as the soil has been loose and such, and they know exactly where that food may be. I can't condone this action that I'm about to give you. I'm not giving you advice, of course, legally I'm telling you this. But you know what? If somehow your neighbor's property or some open land down the road suddenly had some food buried in it, that's a different story, isn't it? Well, maybe you can bury your food there. I'm not telling you to do that. You should comply with what the government says. But here's the thing. You may say, you know what? I'm going to take that food and bury it somewhere on somebody else's property. But do you ever wonder why Walmart went from having cashiers greeting you, hey, welcome to Walmart, and a cashier will ring up your stuff, to now, at least our Walmart has it so there's only like 2 lines open, but then tons of lines open, which are now all automated. And what do you see through those controls? Oh, we don't want people to steal stuff, so we have a camera watching you all the time. Metadata. They could easily say, you know what? We know you have this food. You bought 10 years worth of food over the last couple of years, and your family's not that big. Where is it? I easily see how these corporations and government tie together, because we certainly see that. And Reagan was a big proponent of that too, by the way, where now they know for a fact you have that food, and they want to be able to confiscate it in case there's an emergency. When there is an emergency. How can I say when there's going to be one? Why would they put this executive order there? Just in case? No, government doesn't do anything just in case. They know something's coming. They're orchestrating something coming, and your food and your stockpiles are in jeopardy. Put in the comments below, what are some clever ways you could possibly get around this too? Because you know what? I think a day is coming, and you may agree with me, that the government is going to be not knocking on your door, but pounding down your door to take your food away. They've already said it legally they can do that, and they don't do that for a reason. The government is coming to take your food.